Welcome back to Fintech Frontiers. I'm your host, Stephen Walsh, CEO of Keeper Solutions. I'm delighted to be joined today by an old friend of mine and a longtime colleague, Gavin McGahey, CTO of AccountsIQ. Gavin, you're very welcome onto the show.
Thanks, Stephen. And less of that old stuff, please.
Well, it's been a while, but I'll lay off that, Gavin. Don't you worry. We're all firmly middle-aged here, so. Gavin, let's jump right in. AccountsIQ has been a very successful accounting and finance platform. And I'd just be interested to understand what was the big idea? What was the big problem that you saw on the market originally and, that you set out to solve?
Yeah, just, I suppose by way of introduction, AccountsIQ is an Irish-based SaaS cloud accounting platform. And we've been around for quite a while, actually. We celebrated our 20th year last year. So I suppose just in terms of how the whole story started, I suppose it goes back a while. Originally, I suppose I started out my career, I started out as a software developer. So I built systems within the context of working for a consultancy business. And then that business was then bought by an accounting firm who were called at the time Farrell Grant Sparks. They subsequently been acquired by Grant Thornton. So within the context of the accounting firm Farrell Grant Sparks, and this was kind of in the early 2000s, they had a problem there because they would do the accounts for lots of client companies. And at that time, there were desktop solutions in use. So, Sage 50, TASBooks, QuickBooks, that sort of stuff. And how they operated was completely sort of asynchronously in a way. A client would need its accounts prepared maybe for, a quarter or a year end or something like that. They'd literally have to back them up on a CD-ROM or DVD or may even been an old floppy and send it into the accounting firm, whereupon they would restore it onto their local environment and then, do whatever journal adjustments, do whatever is necessary in the month end, back up and send that back to the clients, and there'd be a shoebox of receipts and invoicing and all that sort of stuff. So obviously highly manual, with all the sort of obvious technology issues with backing up and version control and all sorts of stuff like that happening. Also at that time, obviously, we had the kind of, the initial start of high-speed broadband in Ireland as well. So that became proliferant around that time as well. So, the question was, is there an online solution that could be provided essentially to provide a shared platform between, an accountant and their clients for them to work online on the same version of the truth? So it was really a simple enough concept. But even at that time, there weren't a lot of solutions out there that actually did that. So I think products like NetSuite were kind of established towards the end of the 90s. They've been around a long time as well. And there was very little in Ireland that did that as well. So I guess our mission at that time was really to, build an accounting platform that will allow accountants and their clients to collaborate online. And I suppose that's evolved over time. Our initial channel was accountants, but we've moved into more of a direct channel, obviously, over that intervening period. So we sell directly to clients now in lots of countries around the world, but predominantly UK and Irish markets.
Right. Excellent. So your main markets, UK and Ireland, and what's your sweet spot?
It is, yeah, it is. I mean, we do sell in other jurisdictions. Like we are, it's mainly UK and Ireland, but we do have clients in other parts of the world, in Australia and in the US as well. But our focus really is on the local Anglosphere kind of markets.
Excellent. And so you had at the start of your journey, you had some private investors, some angels. Would you be, from say other fintech founders' point of view, would you be able to maybe take me through the evolution of the company in terms of the backing and the ownership and how that's developed over the years?
Yeah, I guess so. So initially, our founders is Tony Connolly, who's still very much involved in our business as well. He's now our I've been with Tony as well. We had another founder as well who moved to Australia. He's still actually a bit involved in the business as well. We quickly realized at the time, like there's a certain level of investment you have to make, obviously, to build a SaaS platform. You have to establish a good technical platform. That clients can entrust you with their data, essentially. So not only do you build a product, but you have to build a whole service layer around that product as well to make sure that the data is obviously held in a very secure locations. There's data residency as well. So it means you have to host in different regions around the world to comply with data residency regulations. And you have to build, a whole layer of service around it. Like the second S in SaaS is really important. So you have to build support teams. You have to build implementation, onboarding teams. You have to build tooling around implementation and onboarding. So to do all that, you need capital, right? You can't just do it out of nothing as well. So, we worked with some, our angel investors were very much established people like Jerry McKeown, who would have run Torex software, McKeown software, who were, I guess, industry veterans. Other people like Eddie Murphy, who founded Continuum Commerce and another fintech, and they were solid behind the proposition from the get go, and they've helped the business grow. Obviously, then we went through another number of other funding rounds. So we did kind of a Series B round in 2021 with Finch Capital, who are a Dutch-based fund. Then subsequently, a private equity fund has taken ownership of the business since 2024. So they've injected a lot of good impetus into the business as well, and we're growing at a rapid rate as well. So our compound growth rate over the last number of years is about 30% in revenue,
Impressive.
which is great. Yeah,
and sustained. And I think that has seen you in the Fast 50. You've been solidly ensconced there for a long time.
I think we've been there. I don't know if we get there next year, it might be the record or something like that. I think so. I think we've been there 10 years or whatever. So that's good to it's good recognition as well of all the hard work that's gone into it.
Yeah, and most of that's been organic growth, but you've also made an acquisition or two.
Yeah, we've made an acquisition. So we made late 2024. We kind of feel that like every time we sold a product, people would ask us about, have you got an expense management solution as well? Particularly in AP, expense management is an area of much interest to our user base. So we had an old sort of legacy native Android and Apple application that we had built, which did a basic expense management capture. But we kind of felt that there's a lot of additional value we could add with a dedicated expense management platform. So we acquired a business called Expense in the UK, who are a fantastic business, and they've developed a really, really good expense management platform, and they've also got an element of AP automation in there as well. And we've been working with them since the start of 2025 to integrate them fully into our business as well. So we've now got a very nicely integrated expense management platform into our finance management system.
Fantastic. And it struck me as well, it seemed to be there was a good cultural fit between the two organizations. Sometimes that can be a difficulty, but not here.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think we feel very passionately about to do the right thing with products, really, really customer focused in terms of what we do. We don't make decisions based on hunches and sort of blind faith. We look at the data coming back from our customers. We capture a lot of data from customers in relation to what they'd like to see in the product, and really focus on the areas that matter in terms of people operating in whatever areas they need to do within the products.
Absolutely. I should ask you as well, by way of disclosure, Keeper has been a technology partner with AccountsIQ since 2000. I'd be interested to hear you. Maybe we could talk about what the value of those kind of strategic technology partnerships can be for fintechs in your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think Keeper has been a massive part of our success as well, and our ability to scale. Like, let's say around the 2015 period, I quickly kind of realized that scaling an engineering team in Dublin was at that time was quite a difficult thing to do. Obviously, given the other kind of larger big techs and the competition for talent in Dublin was quite difficult to scale at any meaningful level. We had some previous experience doing some offshoring before, which didn't really necessarily work out. But I think when we met Stephen on the team, we found a different approach, hugely based around partnership and making sure that the people connections are equally as important as the technical connections as well. I guess after the Finch round in 2021, we actually restructured our engineering team and our product teams quite considerably. So we moved to a squad-based approach. And even since the day one working with Keeper, I think our philosophy is very much to embed and to, to avoid a them and us relationship with an offshoring partner. So all of the Keeper solutions engineers work side by side with the AccountsIQ full-time people as well. They all use the same tooling, the same processes are followed.
Yeah.
And that sort of mixture and cross-pollination of process policy has been really good. So I guess from my perspective, if we're scaling the team, I can pick up the phone to Stephen and he can help us just obviously assess the type of gap we might have and how long that would take to fill. and it sort of works well from that perspective. So I guess that's really the way it's worked, and we'll continue to grow that way as well. And
Yeah.
you know,
Thanks.
we've been able to resource the team to the right level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like, because I know firsthand you've got you lead a very strong technology core, and also now you've got a very strong product function, and that I think that kind of strategic use of a technology partner to help with scaling what has allowed you to really focus on the product market fit and
Yeah, you're
not
right.
being too distracted.
We didn't have a dedicated product management function before. I guess it was largely led from myself and the management team. So,
Yep.
it is still, I guess, engineering led, I suppose. So we have a very, very talented product director, Sinead Brennan, who works with us now as well. And Sinead actually has run the full gamut. Like she operated within a senior finance role in one of the companies that we actually implemented AccountsIQ in. And she
Yeah.
liked the product so much, she came and joined the company,
Yeah.
which is great endorsement. But firstly, she came into the company and she led our professional services arm. So she was over onboarding, and then we were able to nab her into become our product director as well. So she works very closely with myself and our head of engineering, our engineering director, Pascal, who's been one with us from the start as well.
Yeah.
And it's a good triumvirate, I suppose, in terms of making
Yeah.
sure that we're kind of taking the best from the customer focus, and also engineering skills, and trying to come up with the right outcome.
Well, it seems to be working great, and obviously, like with all that experience that Sinead really knows and has lived what it is to be a customer and understands the pressures that they have, and been able to bring that into the product design and through that partnership with
Yeah,
the
it
technology group. So,
circumvents a lot of guesswork, because otherwise, engineers and product designers. So we have a UX team, a design team as well. They really need to obviously understand what the problems are that a finance person would meet, and what their expectations are around how a feature would work. And she's able to provide that, and then let those people use their skills to come up with the right solutions, and then obviously
yeah.
implement them.
And I think that can be something as well that companies struggle with, because you can get very good product managers or designers who are specialists in that function, but without the domain knowledge and expertise, I think it can be difficult for them to really get into the mind of the customer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right. I suppose, like, there are product professionals out there, and they can operate, I guess, but they can be a bit generous, so they kind of move between different areas potentially. But we kind of found that without the domain experience, it just kind of, the outcomes are harder to achieve, I suppose, in the right amount of time. And we're a fairly fast moving business as well, and it's a lot of it is around shipping cadence and making sure that we're delivering stuff out to market to sort out problems our customers have, or to keep up with the competition. And it's great to have people who can kind of just cut to the chase and, make a call and stuff with the right amount of knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got that nailed. Now, I suppose we've gone a good few minutes into this without talking about AI, but it is kind of affecting an awful lot of things. So I thought maybe we could drill into that. Like, what are you seeing as the opportunities or the impacts of AI on your business and your product?
Yeah, I think it's really, really exciting. It's hugely, I have to say, like, in my career, it's the last, I don't know, 2 years to 18 months have been probably the most exciting. And I think, it's like, it's really trying to bottle that in a way that actually adds value for our customers. And well, you have to recognize that our customers may have, and like, first and foremost, AccountsIQ is a finance platform, is a system of records. So that's where everything ends up at the end of a kind of a finance process, if you like. So it's a structured finance platform that people will use to record their accounting information and report on that as well. So the way we see AI is really leveraging AI in the best way to kind of facilitate capture and interpretation of accounting data as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
And finance teams tend to work in quite a structured way. So they'll have a particular set of tasks that they'll carry out as part of a month end. Just to kind of explain, I suppose our platform tends to be used by finance teams of maybe 5 to 6 people in businesses that could run from maybe 200 people to several thousand people. And so it's a little bit more of a mid-tier product than some of the more entry-level products. So our buyers are finance teams, essentially. And they want to sort of automate a lot of the kind of finance operations as well, in terms of how people in the business are interacting with the finance team. So it's all those sort of workflows, all that AI can provide quite a lot of opportunity for automation, really, around that. So to do a lot of the work that might have been done previously by other people, a lot of the input, for example, but then to free up those people to actually work on more value-added tasks as well. So instead of somebody working on typing stuff into the product, typing in invoices or whatever, using automation, maybe using an LLM to extract data from an invoice, for example, to code that appropriately,
Yeah.
to verify that information before it actually gets captured in the first place. A great example would be the expense platform we have at the moment does receipt verification. So it can check the receipt versus a policy, for example, around what's applicable under a spending policy, or it might check the VAT treatment around something. And equivalently on supplier invoicing that we actually import into the product as well, we're using the same sort of logic there. So that takes away a lot of the sort of, tedious work you might have with capture. But then equivalently, given that the information is actually captured in a structured database, if you actually put a data layer on top of that, a semantic data layer, which is we're calling that at the moment, you can layer AI on top of that in a very effective way instead of having it more unstructured. So if you've got a data layer, you can expose AI to look for maybe trends, anomalies in data in a particular way and deliver insights to end users. And that's really, really valuable to the likes of a CFO if they're looking to do their month end, for example. So you're identifying stuff and even helping them to analyze variance, like why does this number moving in a particular direction against budget? Looking at the actual, what's kind of underlying the movement for a given period.
Mm.
Is that related to something happening in a particular one of my entities within my group? Is it related to a particular department,
So the
supplier, whatever? So there's a whole plethora of potential use cases there.
and
So
that,
AI being an enabler, not sort of a thing in itself.
yeah.
We don't lead with AI. We lead with solving a problem essentially that a customer might have, and using AI underneath that, because I think AI will just be embedded in products from now on
Yeah.
anyway, and it'll be second nature to people using it. I think.
Yeah, that's it. That the customer, the end user, they want to solve a problem, and they're not so much concerned as to what the technology behind it is.
Yeah, and yeah, and I like we've done a fair amount of research in this as well with our
Yes.
customers and people who buy our product, and they want to be able to verify the information. They want to be able to stand over the information coming back from the system as well. And if you throw an LLM at something and you throw a load of data into it,
Yeah.
the thing is, if you ask the LLM, if you give the LLM the same prompt 10 times, are you going to actually come back with a consistent answer each time?
You have 10
Probably,
different answers.
you're going to get 10 different answers. If you don't give the right answer, you lose trust immediately, and people have to use the information in the system to make decisions, and
And that's
to
it.
report to their boards and their investors, and to it might be for lending or whatever, banking. It's really important that they can stand over the information as well. So giving that sort of explainability, explaining how something has come up, how AI has come up with a particular answer is really important. And even from a regulatory point of view, obviously people might have heard about the EU AI Act. And one of the central tenets of that is sort of explainability as well, and auditability. So how is an AI LLM actually come up with a decision? What's the log behind that?
So so I've got a few questions. So from the explainability point of view, do you actually have to be able to see the queries that went out and the responses that came in, and to be a data processor for that? Or is that when you're talking about an audit trail? Say, I know you've got thousands, probably tens of thousands of tenants using your system, so you wouldn't see the interactions that they have within their private space. If, say, a user of AccountsIQ was trying to explain how they came up with a particular answer, would they need to be able to go back then and see, well, this query came in and this response was given?
Yeah, I think it's like, this is hypothetical and we don't have this in the product yet, but it is something that potentially we can build. Like if you're looking at something like a variance, for example, you've got a certain amount of drivers, right, that you can send to an LLM. You can actually say, okay, here's one number here, which might be an actual number, and here's a budget number, and you've got a variance between those two different numbers, right? So you could, present that information to an LLM. So you could give it the actual, you could give it the period, you could give it, it's by department or project or whatever, right, as inputs. And then that can make a potential, it can potentially rank potential drivers for that variance. So it's actually providing that information back to a user so they can kind of look at this and see that it's actually used a logical process to
Right.
identify where the variance is coming from, let's say, and
Yeah.
keep that in a non-technical, because if you're actually exposing this to a finance user, they don't want to see a query, right? They want
No.
to see an actual logical kind of explanation. And
Yeah.
they can, choose to look at that. They might disagree with it, for example, perhaps. But at least it's given them an example of what it's trying to do, or sorry, it's an audit trail of what it's trying to do in terms of it coming up with a suggestion.
Yeah. Now, another question then that I wanted to just kind of raise with you is that, say, so if you're extracting data, say, from an invoice and maybe tabulating it into another system in a structured manner, what are the techniques then that you can do to prevent there may be names and addresses, PII in the invoices. So how do you kind of leverage the LLM while protecting the
Yeah. There's absolutely. So, that's key as well. Well, first of all, it's fundamentally sort of in terms of actually using the LLMs themselves, it's ensuring that you're not actually, passing any PII data that could be used to train those models, because, from a sort of a data protection point of view, that's something that, almost all of our customers don't want to happen. So their PII has to be absolutely respected. And there's ways in which you can actually use a certain level of redaction as well around PII before you actually
masking
train
or
masking and so on with the models. And the way we look at it as well is we have to be really transparent about how we use models as well, and give the ability to opt in or out of using AI and models as well. And the work we're doing with agents in our product right now is we're surfacing that within the UI, so people will be actually provided with the requisite information around how we're using LLMs, what information we're passing, if any, to LLMs, so they can make those decisions themselves, and it's very much compliant with whatever data protection regulations they're subject to. And like I say, we can't sort of just change the product in such a way that they have to use AI in case they don't want to for whatever reason. So it's very much an opt-in policy, an opt-in, approach, and that's backed by our own terms and conditions as well. So funnily enough, like that's exactly what I'm actually working on at the moment, is just actually getting all that agreed and publishing that as we're actually releasing those agents in the very near future at the moment.
Fantastic. And it seems that there's been a kind of a thoughtful approach. I know that there's been a tendency in a lot of products to kind of put the AI or the agentic chat into it, but that maybe with mixed results. So is that really something customers want?
We've kind of learned from that. We've seen, I heard somebody calling it using a black box approach versus a glass box approach. So the black box approach might be to put a all things to all people chatbot into the product and hooking your API up to that so that somebody can go in and just start, I don't know, generating invoices or copying or extracting, asking it, for a particular, let's say it asks for a particular financial metric or something like that. And with the result that there's a certain level of prompt fatigue. So you're not guiding the user in a particular way to get the right sort of result as fast as possible. So our approach really has been instead is actually to come up with almost like a suite of tightly scoped agents that we can expose into certain areas of the product that will help people. So they're assistants. And even the word agents might, like with all things, that term might sort of go out of popularity as well. So we're careful not to call them agents.
Automation?
It's really automation. Yeah, it's intelligent automation.
Actions. Yeah.
So we have reactive and non-reactive agents. So a reactive agent might kick in, for example, if somebody's booking something to fixed assets. So they're buying a company car, that needs to be registered as a fixed asset. So say they're putting in an invoice to buy a company car, the agent will then recognize that a company car has been purchased based on the language on the invoice line. And then it can actually give the user a nice journey then to just, create the fixed asset by extracting information from the invoice and filling in the necessary fields to code it properly against the fixed asset class. Another example would be doing a prepayment. So if somebody's actually creating a prepayment invoice that needs to be spread over periods, the agent again can kick in to create a prepayment journal, spread that cost over a number of periods. So those are discrete agents that have been tightly scoped. That's all they do. They don't do. It's not a sort of a black box agent that could do all sorts of other stuff. So they're constrained from that perspective. And the good thing about that is we can record, from a back end perspective, how often those agents are being used, how much time they're saving over the manual process, and provide that value back to the user as well to show them how much time they're saving and how often these things have been used.
Oh, well, that's great if you can put
And then,
metrics on it and move the KPIs and be able to demonstrate the value, because measuring ROI in AI deployment had been spotted as a major problem by September last year with the MIT report. So
exactly, yeah, and we read the same report. So like I kind of said at the start, finance teams tend to work with fairly fixed processes in terms of tasks they need to complete. So what we want to do is actually allow them to define all these tasks, to track them, and then put in agents where we feel the most value is to assist with the completion of those tasks, but then still allow the human to be in the loop in terms of them actually verifying things as well. So the level of autonomy will maybe get a bit more over time. But for now, for example, my example around creating a fixed asset, at the end of the day, human will be there to make sure that, the information that's been captured is correct, and press the post button on creation of that fixed asset, as opposed to the agents that's doing it themselves.
Yeah. So, and that tightly scoped and deeply integrated with measurement on time saved sounds like we're getting into the territory of, very well applied and been able to measure ROI. So I can see that that's starting maybe to deliver on some of the promise that AI offers. Can I ask you something I've been kind of thinking about, which is, so like you've got that tightly scoped task, it's categorizing transactions, maybe getting some information from the semantics, the notes around them, and then being able to say, okay, that's a fixed asset. We're going to book that here. So you don't, like, for that, it's just doing that very tightly scoped activity. So it doesn't really need to know the origins of, ancient Greek philosophy or the archipelagos in the Pacific. So what tools, if you don't need a general LLM presumably for that, or
in some cases you do, in some cases you don't. Like the LLM bit there is being used for semantic matching. So if somebody books in I bought a BMW 5 Series on my invoice line, it'll use an LLM to sort of interpret that information and then say, okay, this is a motor, what would you say, a motor fixed asset class, for example, a company car fixed asset class, and allow that matching to take place. So it's used in very discrete places. LLMs are great by their very nature. They're called large language models. They're language models. They're great for language work. So they can interpret a set of results and provide a very nice description of that. And you've got to, they're very good for those use cases, but sometimes in relation to sort of, maybe numerical classification, things like that, they're less good. So you got to be careful where you use them. And if you're going to use them for, that sort of work, you got to have a really good data model underneath that, so it can use that data model, so you're comparing apples with apples and getting the right results.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is about empowering people and maybe trying to automate some of those more routine, labor-intensive tasks. So that kind of leads me to the question of, what do you think is the kind of the impact on the jobs market, or on the shapes of companies, in terms of, is it supercharging people, or is it replacing people, or how do you see that whole?
Yeah, I mean, listen, every day we all wake up to the same sort of articles, across the print media or online and stuff about displacement and, all the sort of, I guess, a lot of, job losses, particularly in the US, and some of the larger big techs as well around that, and them using, like, I'd say potentially they're using AI. Maybe a lot of these businesses had a lot of headcount and that they kind of, they hired aggressively after COVID, and AI now is quite convenient.
AI washing.
To potentially let go people. One thing I read yesterday, actually, I think from a guy in Meta, actually was quite interesting. He was kind of talking about, like, if you think AI is going to displace jobs because it's going to automate a lot of work that businesses are undertaking, that sort of assumes that there's a fixed amount of jobs to be done in businesses already, right? But if you can think of it, like, AI might actually allow a lot more jobs to be done, essentially. So if you're automating a lot of the tedious, kind of mundane, kind of input level kind of tasks, it frees people up to do a lot of new jobs they mightn't even be doing in businesses. And if you think of any sort of business of any size of complexity, there's a lot going on there. And if the data is properly structured and categorized and centralized in a business, and you put AI layers on top of that, there's a lot of hugely important analytical work you can do. You would hope that finance teams who have the responsibility to kind of collate data in their organizations, bring all that finance data, all the sort of, let's say, sales information, headcount information together into a kind of an overall data model. If you put AI on top of that and you structure it in the right way, there's a huge opportunity to improve the value, to really understand, get under the hood of the business in a way that people simply haven't been before, because they've been chasing their tails trying to close out month ends and just do the basics.
Yeah.
So, I think clever businesses will use AI and systems to do that, as opposed to using it as an excuse to just, call a lot of people, I suppose.
Yeah. And it sounds like yourself, and I know some other fintechs as well, are trying to look for the value, how to solve those customer problems better, and then building the infrastructure so that there's that it'll enable a roadmap in the future to bring in capabilities that would be needed at particular times.
And I think absolutely, and like, this is actually, we've obviously, just between Keeper and ourselves, we've come up with we've expanded our team to take that problem on, actually, in terms of actually building a new kind of analytics reporting layer sitting on top of our platform to allow our users to essentially interact with their data in that very way. So, we took a step back. We looked at how we were doing reporting, and we figured that we needed a proper data model on top of our platform, really, to allow that to happen, and to give a really good foundation to apply AI over the next number of years.
Yeah, it's a smart way to go, and I think that some the more successful companies are taking that kind of approach, rather than just jumping in, throwing an agent on there, but rather really looking at how the problem solving can be evolving into the future, and making sure that their product will be able to support that journey. Excellent. Well, Gavin, look, thanks so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and it's really been fascinating, the journey that AccountsIQ is on, and I think some exciting times ahead. So thanks
very much, Stephen. Really enjoyed it, and catch up with you soon, and you can buy me that pint you promised me 10 years ago.
I'll get you two at this stage. All right. Cheers.
All right. Thank you.